Hey, Coach Lee Sandstead here, who still has an amazing post-ride glow from the storming of Thunder Ridge that we had this past weekend. Amazing weather, amazing team at the YMCA led by Paul Adall. This was their 13th year, and it's always an amazing event. These are the roads that I live on. These are the roads that I train on. I live in Bedford County, the town of Bedford in particular. So I'm very attached to this ride, and I think it's amazing that this region has a ride like this. I'm a coach for Pro 13, and I'm also hosting a first annual The Great Bedford Valley Road Ride on September 24th. So if you want to jump in on that, reach out to me, Google it. You can find it pretty easy. But these are the amazing roads, and you could have several Grand Fondos a year on these roads. Gravel, mountain bike, just about everything that you can imagine. Bedford County is an amazing place. And as so many of you saw, that these roads of Bedford are absolutely amazing. Hey, want to do a quick video on, 4 big ways to improve your storming of Thunder Ridge. It is not an easy ride by any means whatsoever, but with a few key things that I've learned over the years, you really can up your game, not only for the storming of Thunder Ridge, but in general across all of your Grand Fondos, your century riding. So let's talk about it. We want to talk about pacing. We want to talk about getting speed. We want to talk about nutrition, and we talk about heat acclimation. And again, this video is sponsored by the Great Bedford Valley Road Ride, Bedford County. Cyclists do it best in bed. All right, pacing. Now, pacing is a very fascinating subject. So there's many different ways that you can pace. If you're using watts, if you're using heart rate, if you're using rate of perceived exertion, basically this is an all-day ride. This is a 6-hour ride. So our pacing is based on that. And basically what we want to do is we want to pace this ride somewhere around zone 2. We don't want to do very much in zone 3 because it's a long, arduous ride. And we certainly don't want to do very much in zone 4. And we don't want to go spend hardly any time in zone 5, zone 6, zone 7 whatsoever. And so if there's one big pacing tip that you could take from this, spend as little time over threshold as you can. Spend as little time over threshold as you can. Zone 2 is a great place, okay? So if you're in zone 2, you can speak, you can have a conversation, you can say your ABCs, right? You can take a deep breath, go, and then say your ABCs out loud, the entire alphabet. That means pretty much you're in zone 2. Now, there are periods of this. There are some pretty steep climbs. There are tons of rollers in this up century, and so you are going to be going into your tempo. You are going to be bumping up to your threshold. My advice is to stay well below your threshold as much as possible. Only go into your threshold where it's necessary. And there are a couple of big kickers. Not only the big 12.5-mile climb, which you really don't have to go threshold or even tempo at, but there are some very nice kickers. To get to the climb, there's some kickers. To get back to Lynchburg, there are quite a few kickers. All right, so I really recommend this. If you can hold a conversation with people, that's pretty much where you want to pace. Zone 2 for the whole thing, if you're thinking in terms of watts, you're somewhere between 56 and 75%. And pacing is, not, start pacing at 5 hours in or 4 hours in. Pacing is, if you're going to, pace at 75%, which is 200 watts for you, then you want to start at 200 watts, pace yourself as much as possible to 200 watts throughout the entire ride. Okay. That's a quick thing on pacing. There is so much on pacing out there. The next thing is getting speed. This thing is filled with rollers, and some of you might want to get speed out there. You might want to make your ride the fastest ride that you can do to get a PR or to get a high placement on the Strava segment, whatever you want to do. All right, here's the basic thing about these things, all right? So we're all rollers here where we live, where it's all up and down. There's really very little flat. So when you have a scenario like this, a road scenario, where do you want to get your speed? We have to think in terms of physics. So here we are on the bike. We have power, our watts, that's pushing us forward, but we got gravity pushing us down, aerodynamic drag pushing against us, and rolling resistance. These are all pushing against us. So what do? Well, where can we get speed? Basically, if we want to do 200 watts, we're going 10 miles an hour up a hill. If we want to go 20 miles an hour up that hill, we have to go 400 watts. So we're at 200 watts, we want to go 400 watts. And so by doubling our power, we can go twice as fast. By doubling our power, we can go twice as fast. Okay. Now, when we go downhill, when we have the descents, we have that long 12.5-mile descent from Thunder Ridge. We have long descents. Twice as fast, you have to do 8 times the power. So say you're at 200 watts, you're going 20 miles an hour. You want to go assuming that you have the gearing, and you want to go 40 miles an hour, and you're not steep enough to get, just dive bomb something, well, then you're going to have to go 8 times. You got to go 1,600 watts, okay? So this has tremendous implications for us and for the ride, okay? So basically, if your pacing strategy is 200 watts, well, you give it a little gas on the hill. When you're going down, you take off a little bit. When you're going up, give it a little gas, right? Going across the top, where our flats, we're just at 200 watts. Going down, 180 watts, okay? So basically, the theory is, because of physics, aerodynamics, drag, all that great stuff, if you see a hill, know your pacing zone. So if you're pacing at 60%, right, you just go up that hill 70%. You don't go up the hill 100% of your pace, of your threshold. You don't go over it. You don't kill yourself to get to the top of that hill. You just give it a little gas, right? So basically, you go soft, you go a little more on the climbs, but you're still not going threshold, and then you're keeping on the gas going over. All right. So what do most people do for this ride? They're the first big climb is Charlemont. Okay. Everybody gets to Charlemont. They start to race, take off for Charlemont. People are breathing, sweating. They're out of the saddle. They can't speak to each other. You can hear them exhaling. And then they get to the top, and then they coast down. All right. A better way to pace that scenario is to go easy up that climb and keep on the gas on the way down. You keep yourself out of threshold. You keep yourself in the fat burning zone. You keep putting off your burning of carbs as long as possible. There's tons of reasons why it all makes better sense. It's not what people do, but if you can do it, if you can have that discipline where, if you're pacing at 60%, you go 70% up the climbs, 50% on the descent, right? Instead of, 110% up the climbs, 0%, then you're actually going slower that way and burning a lot of fuel, burning matches, and destroying yourself for a rather inefficient pacing strategy. So that's a big thing to keep in mind. Nutrition, this is a big one. This is really quick. So there's tons of information on this out there. The person that I listen to the most about all this stuff, including that discussion about where to get speed on a course in terms of giving a little more 10%, reducing 10%. Tim Cusick, legendary coach, basecamp.com. He is an amazing coach, and I listen to everything he has to say online because he is in it. He's working with professional athletes. He's working with Olympians. He is working, with the best of the best, and he loves to share information. So this just doesn't come from me. And, he has a lot of sources. And so there's a lot of sources for this information. Research it. But basically, I'm a coach, and whenever I first have this discussion with new athletes, my athletes are chronically underfueled for their events. Even and they're training. Even though they might think in their head that they're doing a lot, they're actually not doing a lot. So let's jump in here. What does this mean? So nutrition, basically for a ride like this 6-hour ride, you want to get about 100 grams of carbs an hour. Now that's hard to do. You actually have to train your gut to get up to 100 or 120 grams of carbs an hour. But, start at 80 in your training and try to work yourself up. So my nutrition strategy, and I had it all planned out before. I trained my gut. I knew it. I did all this in training so that nothing surprised me. Race day, I had it all figured out, and it's a lot. Okay. So like this is the first half of the race. So if your goal is like 6 hours, this is just hour one, we want 100 grams. And so we can get like a scratch super fuel or some kind of super fuel to put in your bottle. That's roughly 36 grams. You can have a gel, which is 25 grams, a banana, 27 grams, another gel at 25 grams. I try to mix it up. Now this is a lot because, and notice this is hour one. Okay. So you don't start eating at hour two. You start eating at minute 15 for an all-day ride like this, okay? So you're standing there listening to Paula Dahl's great speech at the YMCA about all the great things that's going to happen to you today. You're having a gel, all right? Then she shoots the gun, and everybody just races out. 15 minutes, you have another gel. 15 minutes, you eat a banana. Another 15 minutes, you're doing something. Every 15 minutes, you're putting basically 25 grams of carbs. So every hour, that goal is 100 grams of carbs. And now if you lay it all out, that is a lot. Like that's handfuls of gels, right? So if you have a gel and that has 25 grams of carbs, that's 4 gels an hour. That's every 15 minutes, you're putting something in your mouth. Remember that because that's so crucial. At the beginning, I like to eat solid foods. I'll have a power bar and I'll eat my bars and things of that nature. And then towards the end, like hours 5 and 6, like 4.5, I switched to more gels. But so you get the idea. Experiment with it. But I guarantee you are chronically under-fueled for the Storming of Thunder Ridge and most of your training and Gran Fondo racing. So this is just hours 1, 2, 3. How many hours are you going to be out there? I did it in 6.5 hours, 7, 8. You want 100 grams of carbohydrates, CHO. Okay. Heat acclimation. Now this is great because this is a great, one of the major influencers on me. Her name is Amber Neben. She's a very famous Olympian, world champion, all this great stuff. She went to Tokyo. They did tons of heat acclimation. And so these tips really come from her or heavily influenced by her and Lindsay Golich, which comes from this podcast. But basically heat acclimation is crucial because in Virginia, this is basically for the last 2 years, this was basically our first hot day of riding. So we could not heat acclimate. So it was brutal out there. We didn't have time to adjust for the humidity or for the heat. And then it just comes down first day, boom, Storming of Thunder Ridge, right? And so this is crucial. You have to do as much heat acclimation before this race as possible. It might be cold today. So this is 2 days after the Storming of Thunder Ridge. It's 50 degrees outside, okay? It's cloudy, 50 degrees. The day of this one, the 2022 edition, it was in the high 90s. It was humid. There were no clouds whatsoever. So it was absolutely brutal. And for me, heat is my Achilles heel. If your threshold is say 300 watts, you can expect to just take off 10% of that just because of heat and humidity. Okay. But for me, I'm taking 20, 30% off just because heat and humidity, unless I'm acclimated. And I was not acclimated for this day. I did everything that I could. I just was not acclimated for this day and it destroyed me. Here's some great information. Take a screenshot of this and go over it. Heat is a stretcher, much like training stress, treat it that way. Basically take it very seriously, build up to it, go for walks in the heat. this Train Right podcast down here is great. It talks about saunas and things like that. Then recover from heat exposure properly. Recovery is crucial. Rest and sleep in cool environments. Expose yourself to heat gradually in low intensity situations for at least 5 to 3 weeks while recovering fully, but between sessions. Wear technical fabrics. This is all great information. Again, I believe I got Amber Neben heavily influenced this. So she's fantastic. Now those are the 4 big things you really need to do before going into this ride. So let's look at this. How did I do for this ride? So here's the elevation of the course. So we got Lynchburg over here. We have, the run into Charlemont. Charlemont's our first big climb, that great road where we can see the top of Thunder Ridge for the first time. And so this is the high point. This is actually on Charlemont. And this is that long, deep descent into Big Island, and then we go through Big Island right there. Then we go up the climb. We do up the climb, down the climb, and then we do rollers all the way into Lynchburg. So how did I do? Well, so this is the yellow marks my power. The red line is my set FTP, my threshold. And this blue line is fascinating because this is a blue line that tells me or shows me visually how much I'm burning matches. So basically, when I'm over threshold for a period of time and start to dig deep, everything I recommend against, okay, the blue line starts to dip, all right? And so for this, it's telling me that first hour, I went really hard to the base of the climb, which the Storming of Thunder Ridge, you have your plan, and then you got to throw it all out because that first hour or hour and a half or whatever it is to get to the climb, that's when people are just having fun. They're feeling good. They're in a beautiful location. They made it. They're all jazzed up, and they are definitely doing Charlemont too hard. I saw guys just couldn't breathe and were just wiped out after that first climb at the beginning of Charlemont, and we had all those rollers to go, right? So that was not me because I was prepared for it, but I did dig deep. I had a great time rocking this out, and you can see where I dug deep. The climbs, boom, boom, boom. But again, I was trained for this, and I was totally prepared for this. Normally in a century, I would go over my threshold. I would dig deep as little as possible until the very end, right? Okay, so then we get to that first hour up to the climb, you can see how deep I dug. And then, boom, we're going up the climb. You can see my watts are all below my threshold. I stay below that threshold as much as possible. I did not drink right here or stop. I wish I would have stopped right there because there's a water stop right there. I wish I would have stopped right there. I did not. I still had a half a water bottle right here. And so my plan was to get to the end of Joplin and go right here for a water stop. In hindsight, that was not enough water. The humidity took so much out of me. I wish I would have stopped right here, blasted over the top, and then got down here. So my pacing strategy, right? So I was in it to get a PR for the day. And my pacing strategy, I'm 175 pounds, and that is too heavy. So I am not going to get much speed on that climb. And so that's also where, getting speed on the course, thinking about getting speed on the course, I don't recommend you trying to get a lot of speed on that climb. I don't recommend you going an extra 10% above your pacing strategy simply because it's too long. It's an hour and a half climb, right? And then we have so much to do afterwards in scorching heat for the rest of the day. So what I recommend is taking it easy, have conversations with people, to go as kind of not as slow as you can go, but go your endurance pace. Go up, make sure you're rotating your neck, you're rotating your arms, you're getting out of the saddle every 5 minutes, you're having fun. So by the time you get to the top, you're not blasted by any chance whatsoever, right? And so that's what I did. And so my pacing strategy was, if I'm going to set a PR, I have to stop as little as possible and just keep riding my pace as much as possible. So I got to the top. I did not take a water bottle. I sprinted over the top. I nailed down the nailed down this course, had a great time nailing down this, and I stopped right here. But when I got right here, stop was way too long. And you can see I took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I believe this was a little stop right here, really super quick, 6 stops. And so that's how hot it was. When I do centuries, I stop one time at mile 50, and that's it. But that's how hot this was, where I stopped pretty much every single stop that I could find. I mean, it blew me up. This route. So we get down here and we just bounce around. I stayed my pacing strategy. And this was hard because all of my arch enemies, they were going by. They were throwing water bottles at me. They were laughing at me. They were making fun of me. But I didn't break my pacing strategy. And I just kept rolling all around through the end. And I got done about 6 hours and 30 minutes, I believe, which was a lot. I really wanted to get this thing done in 5 hours and 45 minutes, but I lost about 45 minutes just because of the heat. I stayed in my endurance zone for these last 50 miles. I stayed zone 2 the whole entire time. I did this just like lower tempo, upper endurance. And then all of this, you could see I was clearly in zone 2. And then at the very end, I wanted to book it home. And so, which I did, I dug a little deep and I got home and I had a good solid ending. Okay. Now here's, basically 7 tips for this thing. Consider losing weight. I need to lose weight. At 175 pounds, I'm going to have a hard time getting, 5:30. So my goal is 5 hours, 30 minutes someday to do this thing. I'm going to have to do it in the winter because I just can't do heat. So I might, that's a big thing. So consider losing weight. I need to get down to 165 pounds. Understand your thresholds. Understand what zones are. Understand, if you're able to talk to people, if you're able to breathe, through your nose, in and out your nose, where you are in terms of your zones. And then pace below that. Once you understand your threshold, then pace below your threshold. Don't try to crank it on this thing. Nutrition, hydration, drink, eat, drink, eat, drink, eat. Proper gearing. Make sure that you have the gearing that you can do a zone 2 ride up the mountain. I was behind one gentleman. He was he was old school as you can be. I think I was trying to count, but I think he only had 8 gears on his back, and his biggest was a 25. And I bet he weighed, probably 225 pounds, meaning that was going to be a brutal climb for him. If he had a better gearing system in the back, he could have taken it a lot easier up the climb, and hopefully enjoyed the back 50, 60 miles more than he was enjoying the climb up to the top of Thunder Ridge. So proper gearing is crucial. I mean, get that done. Practice 1 hour hard starts, right? So if you want a fast time on this course, that you're going to know that first hour, if you want to stay with the lead group and pace lines as much as possible, so where they're pulling you around, that first hour is going to be hard. So there's a great workout that I give my clients that I do. It's called the hour of power. You warm up, you do an hour of tempo, and then you relax, okay? And that hour of tempo is basically exactly what you're going to be doing in that first hour if you want to stay with the group. So you have to have your body, you have to have your mind knowing what that first hour is. And I believe that's exactly what I did. I think I got to the climb in 52 minutes or something like that. I was tired, but I knew it. I was prepared for it. I was trained for it. So I've been doing those hour of power workouts, ever since probably January. And so, every couple of weeks, a great hour of power, that really helped. And so I knew where I was. I was burning matches, but my body was prepared for it. I was building resilience. Okay. And then lastly, heat acclimation, right? So that's the biggest thing that I just don't do right. I didn't do it right this year. The heat wiped me out, and all I could do in that last 60 miles, instead of crushing it, was basically just go lower zone 2. And I was miserable. I just was not having fun. And that's not normally how I do centuries. I normally do them really good, where I pace it correctly and everything is fine, great food and everything. And so that I'm working when I get back to that finish line, but I'm usually crushing it a lot more than what I did out there. So basically that's it, everybody. Contact information, lee@bikeleakbike.com. Send me an email. I have this website, the Great Bedford Valley Road Ride.com. Come back and join these roads. Join us for the first annual road ride. This is a great place to ride your bike. And as we like to say here in Bedford, cyclists do it best in bed. Thanks, everybody.